Hi, I'm Saxon. This is Matt. We're at Jigsaw 24 in Soho to do an unboxing of the new product from Avid, the Avid Carbon. Here it is.
Super exciting. So here's the box, and it looks like a box. So let's try and find something.
They've handily put the connectivity on the back.
Yeah, that's very cool. Nice line drawings, which is all part of the marketing thing with the new Carbon. So in here is a box with, rack bolts, an Ethernet cable, interesting choice, license, registration, power, the usual things.
Right.
And if I take this out, do you want to? And so here is the actual box. Obviously loads of polystyrene and bagged up nicely. So if I pass it to you, do you want to?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So
Very nice. There it is.
Yeah.
In all its glory.
Looks nice. Usual controls on the front. We've got some sort of mic control. Some other control here looks sort of monitor-ish. Bunch of levels. Obviously some segmented metering. What's really cool, 4 headphone ports.
Yes, I saw that.
That's very cool. And a couple of instrument inputs. So yeah, let's turn it around. What do we got on the back? Mic line inputs, that's very cool. Variable Z. Variable impedance inputs, sort of cool for ribbon mics, that sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
D subs lining out. A stereo, pair of stereo monitors on TRS jacks. That's very cool. A foot switch input.
Great.
Word clock I/O, which is cool, and 4 8-out ports, 2 in, 2 out. That's good for expandability, I guess.
Yeah.
And 2 network ports.
Fantastic.
I wonder what that's for. I noticed there's no host connection. There's no DigiLink, so it's not HDX. There's no Thunderbolt 2 or Thunderbolt 3 or USB port. So how does that work?
Well, that's these 2 Ethernet ports here, which communicate directly with Pro Tools via AVB.
So obviously this box has DSP inside. It's got 8 chips, 8 HDX DSP chips. They communicate, as you said, via AVB back to the host computer.
Well, that's it, isn't it?
It sort of is.
The great positioning of this piece of kit is that it's nicely between native working and HDX, nicely in between. So It's got a nice DSP.
No, that makes sense. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of where I see it.
So that DSP gives you the acceleration for low latency monitoring.
Yeah.
When you're recording or overdubbing. The really cool thing about the way they've implemented is that traditionally, as a long-time Pro Tools user, changing plugins between DSP and natively is you have to go through a drop-down menu to assign your plugins, and if you rapidly needed to change it, it would be difficult. So with this box, there's a special version of Pro Tools with something called a hybrid mix engine, which has a very rapid real-time ability to dynamically change which plugins on which channel are using your DSP and therefore where your low latency monitor path is. So if you're recording guitar and then need to switch to vocal, the hybrid engine will deal with all that. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that later.
Great. Yeah, it'd be good to see that in action.
The thing with the network ports, we should point out, there are 2 network ports, AVB host connection, which we've already discussed, but the second one at the moment doesn't do anything. Okay. So the AVB connectivity in this box is, although it is a network audio protocol, you can't use it as such. It is literally a host connection back to the CPU.
Mm-hmm. Also, interestingly, the 1 to 8 outputs, is worth noting that this is just a stereo box.
Yes, so because there is a monitor section built in, there's no surround control. So although you can use the line out 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 as old speaker outputs, you can't use it as a surround output, for example.
Great.
So yeah, stereo only with this box, I'm afraid. And furthermore, you should be aware, so the license of Pro Tools that comes with this unit is a standard license, so you don't get the access to surround tracks, immersive audio. You only get the stereo outputs. You can run this box with Pro Tools Ultimate if you already have a license, a Pro Tools Ultimate license, but the box itself, the license that comes packaged with it, is a standard Pro Tools license. We're going to talk a bit now about getting set up with the Carbon and making it work. So the first thing to remember is this box speaks AVB and is Mac only at the moment. Avid Pro Tools Carbon won't work with Windows, and it will work with Mac only and only with proper AVB connections. So generally you want to use the built-in network port on your Mac. We know that will be AVB compatible. If you can't do that, if for example you're using your main network port, or you have a MacBook Pro, what we can do is you can use a Thunderbolt 3 to Thunderbolt 2 adapter, an Apple Thunderbolt 3 to Thunderbolt 2 adapter, and an Apple Thunderbolt to Gigabit Ethernet adapter. You can daisy chain them, or if you have an old-fashioned Thunderbolt 2 Mac, you can just plug in the Thunderbolt 2 to Gigabit Ethernet adapter. So that will get us connected, and then obviously we go network into network port 1. So let's turn the box on, if I can find the power switch. So here we are, and the box comes up, and we've got the network port running. So we're just going to set this box up to run. It's fairly straightforward, but it's a bit different to all other Avid boxes. So Sax, if we can just, first of all, let's just make sure AVB is enabled. So if we go to our network preferences, and we can see all our devices in there. And if we go to our Thunderbolt connection, which is not connection, hopefully in a minute it's connected via, you'll see it's just acquired a link local IP address or a zeroconf IP address, something in the 169.254 range, you can see there. Now, if you have trouble seeing your Carbon, you can, and one thing to check is if you go to the Advanced tab, and if you come over to the hardware setup, you see at the bottom there, there's an AVB/EAV mode. If that is not ticked, you need to change your configuration to manual, untick the box, tick the box again, then configure automatically. So we can click OK out of here. Now, uniquely amongst Avid interfaces, the Carbon is actually set up in Audio MIDI setup rather than any other way. So if we go to Audio MIDI setup, nice one. I like the shortcut there to get to utilities. So audio devices here. Now, a window that probably most of you have never been to, I know I hadn't before I saw a Carbon, is the network window in Audio MIDI setup. So if we show network device browser, you can see in there, and because AVB is enabled, we've detected the Pro Tools Carbon. Do you know what'd be cool, Saxon? Just click on identify, because I've got a feeling something cool will happen with the front panel. So is something happening on the front panel? Cool. Okay, so if you just click on Pro Tools Carbon, that'll appear. And there we go, the serial number and the firmware version. And now, really cool, we can see 2 devices have appeared. And this is one of the cool things about Carbon, is that Carbon, you've got the Carbon I/O itself, if you just click on that section, which is 28 inputs, 28 outputs. And then we've got the Pro Tools Carbon reserved for Pro Tools. Now, what this means is that we can actually hear sound from the operating system coming through to the Carbon while we're running Pro Tools. And those of you who found this frustrating in the past will have realized immediately that what that might allow you is you can run other DAWs with Pro Tools while Pro Tools is open. And as long as they're talking core audio, they'll be able to communicate with the Carbon as well. So that's one of the really, really cool things about this box. So, okay, let's close that and let's open Pro Tools. So we've already installed a copy of Pro Tools 2020.11. And Saxon's opening it now. And the usual warning pops up. Okay, can we open a recent project? Let's say Carbon test. Now, if we just click, if you were coming into this new, if you go to setup and playback engine, you'll see that Avid Carbon, Pro Tools Carbon has its own playback engines. So Sax, if you zip out and then open setup and then go to the hardware setup, and you'll see, so here are all of our options for Pro Tools. If you look here, you can see you can enable the monitor. There's a good exclamation mark icon just warning you that you're going to have an unattenuated output level if you don't enable them on line 1 and 2. So if you've got line 1 or 2, line 3 and 4 connected to a pair of speakers, you definitely don't want to blast unattenuated level out to them. Then you can see you got the headphone sources, so we can select separate outputs for all our headphones, or whether we should take them all directly from the main left and right outputs. And some abilities to change our function switch. So on the front of the unit, the little dot button controls talkback, and there is, if you can see a little spot, there's a little spot on the front panel, which is where the talkback mic is. So we can set the dim amount for when we engage talkback, and we can set the talkback mic gain. The dim amount sets the amount of attenuation when you engage the dim button on the front panel. So yeah, if we go into the line I/O, so in here we've got we can bypass the line in gain if we have a good line amp driving the line inputs. So you don't need the gain control, we can bypass it here. And then we also have the ability to spit out our outputs at +4 or -10, so we're compatible with whatever equipment we're driving. Cool. If we then have a quick look at the I/O setup, we can see how all those hardware setups translate. So as you can see, we've got on our output page, we've got our headphones are effectively bypassed, so they're grayed out because at the moment that's fed from the main monitor output signal. But if we were to enable individual discrete headphone outputs, if we're recording a band or 4 players, we could enable that. So that's really cool. Input wise, exactly, that's what we can see. The cool thing is we've got our talkback mic appears as a Pro Tools input, so we can record our talkback if we want to, if we're taking multiple takes and we want to record the communication that happens, then we can do that directly. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the DSP functionality. So as we said, there are 8 DSP chips, HDX DSP chips built into this box, and if we just open a mixer window. Sax, if you go and create some inserts, you'll notice if we assign a plugin or instantiate, as Avid would say, with their made-up words, you'll see that the only option is native. So you've got the native option there, but you'll notice a new icon next to plugins with a Thunderbolt. That means that a plugin can be run on the DSP. So if we select a couple of DSP-capable plugins and assign them to the first 2 slots, instantiate away. There we go. We've got a couple of plugins. Now, if we want to enable the low latency monitoring or just run the plugins as DSP plugins to save system CPU resources, Sax, if you click on that new icon you'll see in the channel strip with the Thunderbolt, we've now moved those. And you'll see on the plugin that it says that it's now running on DSP, and you get the green indicator on the plugin window. If we put on an 11 Lite plugin, which we know is not capable of running on DSP, and now we try and put that channel into DSP mode, you'll notice that very cleverly it's giving us an issue. It's going to say native plugins have been bypassed because the DSP version is not available. Disable DSP mode to allow native plugins to remain active, but then you won't get the low latency monitoring. So if we click on OK now, you'll notice that 11 plugin has been disabled. So that's really cool because it allows us to enable the low latency monitoring on that. Now, okay, so that's very cool. So if we disable those, now if we can we do me a favor, Sax? Can we route that channel to a stereo bus? Just send it to bus 1 and 2, okay, and then create an aux input next to it. Slide that down so it's next to channel 1. So ta-da, we've got an aux 1 and it's coming up as stereo bus. And if we put a plugin on there and insert a DSP insert, or native for now, just put a compressor or something on it, or an EQ, it doesn't matter. Okay, so if now we've got a bus that's routed. If we change that channel, audio 1, to to DSP mode. The new hybrid mix engine, what you'll notice, if you just click OK, Sax, what you'll notice in the new DSP mode is that it's put all the downstream channel also into DSP mode, because obviously there's no point having a channel in DSP mode if it's feeding something that's running and is latent. So it's the hybrid mix engine is actually intelligent as to how it routes its DSP. Which is, I think that's really cool. So any downstream channels automatically get put in into DSP. One thing I want to show you just quickly is all the cool stuff that comes with the Carbon. So if we, when you register your product, you go to avid.com/register and you put in your number and you get your iLock. Those of you that have used Pro Tools before will know all of this, but basically you need to set up an iLock account. You need to have an iLock to run Pro Tools, and it registers your asset against on iLock.com, and then you can sync that with your Avid master account. Sax has come into our Avid master account here, and you go to view my products, and your resources should pop up. Now this is all documented in the instructions, but one thing that is a bit confusing, and one of the mistakes I made that I shouldn't have. If you come down to Pro Tools Carbon. So here in Pro Tools Carbon, you've got the Carbon, you've got your subscription. And then if you scroll down, you'll see you've got these assets here. These are the free plugins that come. Now, if you're an idiot like me, you'll miss the fact that there are license codes next to the name of all those products. So don't confuse yourself. Next to the name of those codes are all the license codes you need to enable it. And stupid people like me will make that mistake and not actually notice them. Yeah, I hope that's been useful, giving you an overview of how to get started. We think this is a really cool unit. The built-in DSP, the low latency monitoring, great mic amps, variable impedance mic amps, easy to connect to a host computer, super portable, up to 24 I/O analog if you need to connect to a mixer via the ADAT ports. All really, really, really cool stuff. So, if you have any questions, please get in contact, and thank you again.